I know where there's some, right here in the hall, clerk.
No, Molly, I have enough.
Well, this RPG AirMaster, otherwise known as a Continental Radio Corporation 6G chassis, has given me some challenges. Some peculiarities in the circuit, some self-induced pain. And let's start with the oscillator. The first thing was apparent when I was trying to pick up some RF is the oscillator was not working. There was no IF being generated. So I started to look into that. The oscillator. I found a couple of problems. I did replace this resistor and this resistor. This one was, probably within tolerance. This was a 10K, it's supposed to be a 5. Whoops, can't see that. This guy up here is supposed to be a 5K. And what else did I find? This capacitor right here, this is the one that couples the grid back into the switch bank for being able to save or pre-select stations. It was way off. It was supposed to be a 0.0001 microfarad, and it was a 50 puff mica. So this one was simply, and it was labeled, or the color code on it was appropriate, and it's fine. It's just the wrong capacitor. So that was the wrong capacitor. And then the other self-induced pain was when I put this back together. Good old C18 here. I wired directly to ground. So I grounded, all of this, the primaries of the shortwave and broadcast bands, just straight to ground. So of course it didn't work. So I fixed that, put that back so it's coupled to the plate of the 76 tube where it should be. We've probably got the correct voltages on the 76 tube. And I'll show you the oscilloscope trace. Okay, what I'm doing is I have this loose coil of wire, and I'm just going to attach it right there, and then this will fit over or near the 76 tube, and we should be able to see whether it's oscillating. Oops. If I can get it in there. And indeed it is. And one way to prove that is to tune the radio, and we should see that frequency shift as well. And we do. So that means the oscillator is changing frequency, and we're actually starting to get some buzz. We have absolutely no signal going in, so I'm not going to pick up any radio stations, but as you can see, the oscillator is oscillating and is tuning now. And the radio is making noise like it wants to pick something up. So that's good progress. It's not a very stable signal, but I'll try one other place. I wanted to see what it looks like off the grid of the 76. And there it is. Nice and clean. The amplitude does shift as the frequency shifts. I'm not sure the why of that, but it's okay. So, good progress. One of the challenges with this was tracing out the circuitry. And normally that's not too tough a deal, except this one confused me. Right down here, well, first of all, this is the 6D6. And it has right here between the cathode and ground, there's the ground lug, this resistor, this 220 ohm resistor. And in case you're wondering, that's old style color code. So it's 220 ohms and it's on spec. So it works fine. But let me show you the schematic for this thing. So here we are in the RF, first IF section of the 6G chassis. And right here is the 6D6 I was talking about. And if you look right here, here's the heater ground, and there's the cathode ground. There's no resistor in here. There's none whatsoever. So I got curious about this. I redrew the schematic as it appears in the chassis. And by the way, when you look at the solder joints on that resistor that does exist right here, it's clearly factory work. It hasn't been changed ever. So I posed the question to some bright people at Antique Radios, and they came back with, in what is now an obvious answer, which I'll share. And here's what's really going on. Pardon the bilious green, but it is what it is. What they've done in the circuit is they've tied the suppressor grid to the cathode and applied this resistor right here between the cathode and ground, giving it some cathode bias, which is what the 6A7 already had. And the original, and the schematic, as you might recall, there is supposed to be a 350 ohm resistor running from the cathode to ground here. That doesn't exist. So that R4 that I spent many hours trying to find doesn't exist. What there is a connection between this cathode, and they share this 220 ohm cathode bias resistor. So that took me far too long, too much head scratching to feel good about after the fact, but once I got it, that was great. I understood what was going on there, and I could look at those cathode voltages with more confidence. But it does raise the larger question, what else in this radio doesn't fit the schematic? And I have gone through the bulk of it. I have green-lined the bulk of it. And as far as I can tell, this is the only place there is an anomaly. So I've got that corrected on the schematic now, and I understand what's happening. Which leads, of course, to the next problem in this section. Do you remember in the, I don't know, second or third video, I said the antenna coil had tested out okay? Well, it didn't really. I've got all of the rest of it. The output stage sounds fine. If you run a signal generator straight into it, but I can't pick anything up from the antenna side. I can actually, if I jam a modulated IF signal through there, picks up the tone fine, but there's something going on with the antenna coil, which I can't fix. I don't fix coils. My hands aren't steady enough anymore. So it works. I've bypassed the antenna coil. I'm just shoving connected a crude antenna directly to the condenser, tuning condenser, and I can pick up our local, again, our most powerful station right here is our local Russian language station. So I can pick it up, plenty of volume. I mean, it's not picking it up greatly, but it's you know, it's kind of crudely coupling a signal into a place that normally wouldn't go. So anyway, what I've got to do now is start out on a tough search for a replacement for this coil. I'll show it to you. It's this guy right here, and it was just badly chewed up by whatever damaged this radio in the first place. So the good news is all of the audio frequency side works fine. As far as I can tell, I've got the oscillator running and it looks fine. It tunes and all that stuff. Great sine wave on the oscilloscope, but I can't get anything into the radio because of that guy. What doesn't work is this. This is the shortwave broadcast antenna coil, and it's the one that got bashed. And when I was looking at it in the beginning, I talked myself into believing that it was okay. I'll show you why. What I did was I made up this table. There are 6 lugs on that coil, and I made up this table, A through F on top and down the side. And I arbitrarily chose one of them as lug A, and it, in this case, happened to be the shortwave primary. And I did resistance measurements between all of the points, A to B, A to C, A to D, and then B to A, B to C, B to D, so on. And worked up this table of resistances, and talked myself into the idea that it might be okay because there were resistances everywhere, and they looked about right. But I could never get the radio to work. I couldn't get it to pick up any stations. So I took it out, as I should have done in the first place, and here's the truth of the matter. There are 4 coils on this form. 4 coils, 2 for the broadcast, 2 for shortwave. And I mapped out the resistances again and filled out the values on this table. And here's what I came up with. There's a good coil between the B lug and the E lug. There's another one between the D lug and the E lug. B and D are shorted. A and F are shorted, and this one, C, is open entirely. It's not connected to anything. So very clearly, my optimism did not pay off, and this poor coil, this bashed coil, is shot. It's a mostly good form. I guess if I were more steady-handed, I attempt to rewind it, and I may ultimately do that. I don't particularly want to. So what I've done is I've ordered a broadcast, generic broadcast antenna coil, and I'll kludge that in to make the radio at least play AM, hopefully. And I've got feelers out for a replacement for this guy. And, you know, I know that there were many, many thousands of AM and shortwave radios made, and some of them must have had a coil like this. I haven't found one yet, but, you know, you got to keep looking. So this is the last video I'll make on this radio, I think. As I said, it's completely functional except for the RF input stage, which is hosed. So yeah, that's it for this one. I'll put it on the shelf. When the other coil comes in, I'll adapt the circuit to make it work as best I can. And but it's not complete until I can get a replacement in for this guy and make it pick up some shortwave as well. But anyway, I think I'll close this one out, and I will only do one more video on this, showing the finished radio, the assembled radio inside its cabinet, hopefully playing a little AM, although our local AM isn't worth playing. And that'll be it for this one. So thanks for watching. Oh, Larry, you were right. You were right. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself. Be safe.